Despite the regime's ferocious, ruthless crackdown, you see people are not relenting. They are fighting back. So, as I said, you see a revolution has begun, and that's what we had expected for a long time.
Now, protests continue for a 15th day in Iran, and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have spoken on the phone to discuss the possibility of a US intervention. Now, the US launched airstrikes against Iran last summer in support of Israel as the two countries fought a brief 15-day war. Now, threats of another US intervention have been met with a predictably combative response from Tehran. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament said that any US attack would make Israel and regional US bases legitimate targets for retaliation. Some people in Israel may feel that Israel has been a target for Iran for many, many years. Now, the Iranian authorities have taken down the internet, but that hasn't stopped footage taken by protesters in Tehran last night being shared. And the Iranian police chief, Ahmed Reza Radan, had this warning for anyone considering joining the demonstrations.
From now on, the police consider the situation to be one of violent unrest only and will deal with violent rioters forcefully. By standing alongside violent agitators, they themselves become victims of the violence caused by these agitators.
Now, information from inside the country is very difficult to verify because of this blackout on the internet. But the US-based human rights activist news agency says that at least 400 people have been killed. And it says most victims were killed by live ammunition or pellet gunfire, predominantly from close range. And it is really worth looking at the Times online, their kind of live update on this, because, you know, some of the cases of people being killed, very tragic. A lot of young women as well being killed there, but no change there, sadly, in terms of Iran. Meanwhile, members of the Iranian diaspora have staged rallies in solidarity with protesters in Iran over the weekend, including Washington, Berlin and right here in London.
I know that Trump has promised to help Iranian people. We will see what will happen.
We feel like this is the last time. Like we really want to get rid of the Republic of Iran.
I think it's going well, and the revolution will happen in less than 1 month.
Now, yesterday, a protester climbed onto the balcony of the Iranian embassy in Kensington and replaced the Iranian flag with a pre-Islamic revolution lion and sun flag used during the rule of the Shah of Iran. And the Shah's son, Iran's exiled crown prince, Reza Pahlavi, who's based in America, has emerged as a key figure galvanising the protesters. In a statement released today, he praised the protesters for carrying out what he described as a national revolution. Well, let's now speak with Shahin Ghobadi, who's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran. This is a coalition of different Iranian dissident groups, and they constitute a parliament in exile. Shahin, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me at this crucial juncture.
Well, it's great to have your voice. What's your understanding of what's happening at this moment?
Well, I think from all indications, a revolution has begun in Iran, a revolution that will not stop until the mullahs are overthrown. I think what you see is a manifestation of an outrage of a nation that after 47 years has determined to wrest its country from the clutches of these extremists who have ruled in Iran with corruption and brute force. And as you see, every day, despite the massive, ruthless crackdown, the protests are going and getting bigger. Now it has reached to more than 190 cities and towns throughout Iran, according to the information provided by the network of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, which is the main Iranian resistance movement inside the country. And despite the regime's ferocious, ruthless crackdown, you see people are not relenting. They are fighting back. So, as I said, you see a revolution has begun, and that's what we had expected for a long time. I've been working towards that for years and years.
And of course, we're seeing the crackdown on protesters getting more bloody and more violent. How worried are you about that?
Obviously, we are very worried about this because this regime recognizes no boundaries when it comes to crackdown and being ruthless. You have to bear in mind this is a regime that has executed 120,000 Iranian dissidents in the course of the last 45 years, overwhelming majority of them obviously from the Iranian resistance. So it recognizes no boundaries. But at the same time, I think what's different this time is that you see the young people, especially Generation Z, is not caving in. They are fighting back. And I think that's specifically because the role that the resistance units, which are affiliated with the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, have been doing on the ground. They are the unsung heroes of what's happening. And that's what they have been working on for years to prepare the situation for what we see today. So yes, the regime is desperate. They are grabbing at any straws to prevent the wave getting bigger. But at the same time, people and the resistance are pushing back. And also one has to keep in mind, this time the revolution is based on very solid grounds. It's based on the regime's, failing economy, a rampant corruption, a nation which has become destitute because of the regime's policies, water crises, electricity crises. So the foundations that has led to where we are today are very solid, and the regime no way can alleviate any of these. And you see a composition of urban middle class, intelligentsia, and people who have become destitute because of this regime's policies, which are millions and millions of people are composing those who are in the streets and are growing in numbers.
And as I said at the opening of my introduction, Marco Rubio has been speaking with Benjamin Netanyahu, discussing the possibility of some kind of US-Israeli intervention. How do you feel about that?
We think, and we have said it time and again, and as Madam Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, has said time and again, we think the right policy by the West is that, first and foremost, they should recognize the right of the Iranian people and the organized resistance to stand up against the regime's crimes and to bring about a regime change by themselves, for themselves. I think this step politically goes a long way. And this is something that the Western countries on both sides of the Atlantic should do immediately. What I mean is that at the same time that they should be defending the Iranian people's rights, but what's more important is to recognize their right and the resistance.
Sure, but what does that actually mean? Because recognizing their right is one thing. If the Iranian officials are shooting people and becoming ever more violent, if you want to overthrow this regime, wouldn't some military help?
But I think the Iranian people have shown the last 14 years that they are courageous enough and they are fighting back on their own. And I think let's start with the right policy. And that is the right policy is, first of all, recognizing that the people have the right to bring down this regime. Sure. And this is something that the West has not done in the past. And I think that will send a very clear message to the young Iranians that the West is on their side. And then everything else has to be left upon them and the resistance.
So you're saying very clearly there should be support signalled, but you're not keen on any kind of military intervention from any Western country, be it America or anybody else.
I mean, we have said it many times that there is no need for foreign military intervention. But I think what's needed, and do not underestimate its impact, is to clearly, explicitly, unequivocally should be stated that the world recognizes the right of Iranian people and the resistance to bring down this regime and establish a democratic republic by themselves. This sends a very, very clear message.
Sure. I mean, I think that is
the regime.
And
yes, go ahead.
And it feels like that is a message that there is a lot of sympathy for and a lot of coalition for. Let's just move on, Shahin, to what could come next. Mark Urban, who is a very respected foreign affairs expert, he writes for the Times newspaper. He's written a very interesting piece saying that Iran's history shows us that protest led regime change rarely succeeds. And he makes the point in his piece, and it's a very long piece, it's very worth reading on the Times. You know, he says that the problem is that the IRGC, which of course is the Iranian sort of Revolutionary Guard Corps, they have such a strong grip on society, including the management of the economy and military and police and political, that he makes this argument that they might get rid of the Ayatollah and get rid of him, and he might go off to Russia, but then they will just carry on running things, and actually nothing will really change for the Iranian people, particularly the young people, particularly women.
I should say, look at the situation in the streets. If we had talked 15 days ago, to be exact, and we would have said that in 2 weeks' time, Iran would be in such a situation, it would have been written off as wishful thinking and fanciful. The fact of the matter is, Iran clearly is the country of change by the people in the streets, and they have manifested this. Obviously, IRGC will be overwhelmed by the will of the people. Look, IRGC today is battling people in the streets, and they have not been able to contain it. So there is a bigger force here, and that's the Iranian people's desire, and especially the young people, as Mark mentioned. They are the force for change. And this time around, there's a viable alternative in the National Council of Resistance of Iran. What do I mean is that there's a coalition of Iranian opposition movements that rejects both the Shah and theocracy and is looking forward. And I think the future would be a democratic republic Iran. That's what people are chanting for in the streets of Iran. And I think the force that will change everything are the Iranian people and the young people. IRGC is in no position to stop this momentum. Actually, Khamenei went out of his way in the last 2 years to prevent another uprising, because after 2022, it was quite evident that there would be another uprising. So IRGC, other suppressive forces, MOIS, are in no way to stand to the momentum that has built. Now, I'm not talking about tactically, I'm talking about, the eventual outcome. You have to remember, back in 1979, the Shah's army was purported to be the biggest army in the whole Middle East. It was purported to be the most modern army in the Middle East. And what happened? They melted like snow under sun in a matter of a few days.
And Shahin, final question to you. Who do you think people would coalesce around in terms of future leadership? Would it be a return of the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi? Or do you think people of Iran really want a return to the monarchy? I mean, there are placards in London where people are saying no mullahs, but they're also saying no Shah either.
That's exactly the sentiment that one can see. People have no desire to go back to the time of monarchy, which was also synonymous with dictatorship. If one listens to the slogans in the streets of Iran in the last 2 weeks, they are chanting down with oppressor being the Shah or the mullah. The future of Iran is not going to the past, it will be to the future. And look, what we are talking about is not PR games or PR battles or social media games or social media battles. We are talking about a real revolution on the ground. Obviously, the National Council of Resistance of Iran has identified Madam Mariam Rajavi as the president-elect and her 10-point plan for the future. But I think the bigger issue here is that people do not want to go back to the time of the Shah or any kind of dictatorship to that effect, which was synonymous under the time of the Shah as well. And people have said it time and again. I think one has to focus on what's going on in the streets of Iran. The young people who are battling, which are namely the resistance movement units on the forefront, they will decide. And I think the issue is not a PR game or PR battle. The issue is a real battle on the streets with people's blood and flesh. And that will decide the future. Obviously, there's a viable alternative in NCR waiting as well.
Well, look, Shahin, really good to talk to you at such an important moment, as you say. Thank you very much for your time. That's Shahin Ghobadi, who is a member of this National Council of Resistance of Iran.